The Korvax Empire was a world of shining towers and endless lights. From the sky, the capital city looked like a river of gold and silver. Flowing between tall buildings that reached above the clouds, ships of all shapes moved between platforms, carrying people, goods, and machines from one place to another. It was a world of power, politics, and careful planning. In the middle of this empire lived Leora, the young alien heiress. Her family had ruled for generations, guiding their people with intelligence and strength. Leora was intelligent, cautious, and trained in both politics and diplomacy. She had been told many times that the empire's future could depend on her choices. Today, she had to make a very important decision. Her family had arranged for a meeting with a human named Ethan Ward. He was known across several planets as a skilled soldier and negotiator. But the Empire's rumors painted him as heartless. They said he was cold, unmoved by suffering, and too focused on logic to care for feelings. Leora had never met him, but she already felt a sense of unease. She did not like people who seemed so distant. The grand hall was full of important guests when Leora arrived. Alien nobles in shimmering robes spoke quietly to each other. While officials from other planets moved carefully through the crowd, Leora's eyes scanned the room, searching for Ethan. She had only a few minutes to observe him before she would be introduced. Then she saw him. He stood near a group of diplomats, tall and broad-shouldered, his uniform plain but clean. His posture was straight, and his gaze was steady, scanning the room with precision. There was no smile, no sign of warmth. Leora's heart sank. This was exactly what the rumors had said: a man without emotion.
Oh.
A machine in human shape. She took a deep breath and approached. As she walked, she noticed small things that others might have missed. Ethan's hands were calm, his movements careful, and he listened carefully to every word around him. He never interrupted, never raised his voice, never acted impatient. Leora frowned. Perhaps he was simply serious, she thought, but it still felt strange. Finally, they were introduced. Princess Leora, one of her aides said, bowing slightly. This is Captain Ethan Ward from Earth. Ethan inclined his head slightly, a formal but subtle gesture. It is an honor to meet you, Princess, he said in a calm voice. His tone was polite, but it lacked the warmth she expected. Leora felt her doubts grow. How could someone so cold work with her people, she wondered. They talked for a few minutes. Ethan answered questions carefully, always precise. He spoke about his missions, about battles he had fought, and about his belief in fairness and strategy. Leora listened, but she could not find the friendliness she had hoped for. She felt a distance between them, like a wall she could not cross. Then a minor alarm sounded. A security alert flashed through the hall. Several officials began moving quickly, but no one seemed to know exactly what was happening. Leora froze, unsure of what to do. She noticed that Ethan moved immediately. Without hesitation, he guided officials to safety, checking exits and making sure the crowd stayed calm. He acted quickly, but with careful precision. Leora watched him save people she had known for years without showing panic or fear. She felt a strange mixture of surprise and confusion. When the emergency ended, Leora approached him again. You acted quickly, she said, her voice quiet. Most people would panic. Ethan looked at her steadily. I only did what needed to be done, he said simply. There was no boast, no pride, only calmness. Leora frowned, unsure what to make of it. He saved lives, but he still seemed distant. Could someone who acted this way be called heartless? Over the next few days, Leora watched him closely. Meetings, briefings, and discussions followed. She noticed that Ethan was always prepared. He understood politics, strategy, and human behavior in ways that impressed even the most experienced diplomats. Yet, he did not smile often. He did not laugh at jokes. He kept himself in control, always observing, always listening. Leora tried to judge him fairly, but the rumors in her mind were loud. He is heartless, she repeated to herself silently. He does not care for anyone but himself. She had been trained to trust her instincts, but she also knew that first impressions could be wrong. Still, she could not shake the fear that this human might be dangerous. Not in body, but in spirit. One evening, the palace arranged a private dinner for her and Ethan. It was a quiet room. Far from the eyes of the court and officials, the table was set with dishes from many worlds, each carefully prepared. Leora noticed Ethan's calm, precise way of eating, his polite manner, and the careful way he responded to questions. He seemed almost human, yet different. "You have traveled far," Leora said, trying to start a conversation. "Earth is very different from our world." "It is," Ethan replied, keeping his eyes on her, steady but not intrusive. "Different, but there are similarities. People want safety, fairness, and understanding. The rest is culture and habits." Leora tilted her head. His words were simple but thoughtful. She realized he was not speaking to impress her, nor to boast. He was explaining what he understood about life and duty. Perhaps, she thought carefully, he was not heartless. Perhaps he simply showed his care in ways that were not obvious. Their conversation continued. Leora found herself asking more questions, trying to understand him. Ethan answered honestly, never hiding details but never exaggerating. He spoke of challenges, losses, and victories in ways that were calm but not cold. He seemed grounded, balanced, and aware of the value of life. By the end of the evening, Leora felt something shift inside her. The human she had feared might be cruel or heartless was someone she could respect, perhaps even trust. She did not yet feel friendship or affection, but she felt curiosity. She wanted to understand him better, to see why the Empire feared him so much. The next morning, Leora walked in the palace gardens. She watched the sunlight fall on the silver leaves, the streams reflecting the golden towers above. She thought about Ethan, about his calm actions, his careful words, and his strange ability to remain composed in any situation. Perhaps the rumors had been exaggerated. Perhaps humans were different, and not all hearts were shown in obvious ways. Suddenly, a message arrived. A small alert from the palace security system. A minor security breach had been detected near the outer gates. Leora's heart raced, but before she could act, Ethan appeared. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. Without waiting for permission, he moved toward the breach with calm confidence. Leora followed, unsure why she wanted to. She watched him coordinate guards, examine reports, and communicate with security teams across multiple locations. Each decision was quick but thoughtful. He moved among the guards, helping, guiding, and protecting, yet never raising his voice. By the time the situation was resolved, the breach turned out to be a small technical error, nothing dangerous. But the way Ethan handled it left Leora stunned. She had seen bravery, intelligence, and leadership. She had also seen patience and care. Was this the heartless human everyone feared? She began to doubt the story she had been told. That night, as Leora reflected on the day, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. She wanted to know more about Ethan, to see the man behind the rumors. Perhaps her judgment had been too quick, shaped by fear rather than truth. Perhaps this human, who seemed so distant and serious, had a heart she could never have expected. The first part of her journey was ending. She was still cautious, still hesitant, but curiosity had begun to replace fear. Leora did not yet know the depth of Ethan's character, but she felt the first spark of understanding. And deep down, she wondered, could the heartless human become someone she could trust, perhaps even admire? For now, the city slept beneath the golden towers, and Leora prepared herself for the days to come. Her next encounter with Ethan would not be in formal halls or structured meetings. It would be outside the palace, in situations that would test courage, compassion, and trust. And in those moments, she might see the truth about the man who had seemed so cold, yet who already had begun to touch her thoughts in ways she could not explain. The day after the minor security incident at the palace, Leora could not stop thinking about Ethan. Her mind was filled with questions she had never expected to ask. How could someone so disciplined and calm inspire both fear and respect? Could someone who seemed so distant truly care for others? Her thoughts were interrupted by a message from the council. A humanitarian mission had been organized on a distant, resource-poor planet. Leora was to supervise it personally. The planet, called Viridia, was known for its harsh weather. Its surface was rocky, with sharp cliffs, narrow valleys, and sudden storms. Its people, mostly miners and farmers, struggled to survive with little help from the outer empire. Leora had been tasked with overseeing aid, supplies, and training to improve living conditions. She had prepared herself for a mission that would test her patience and diplomacy, but she did not expect to see Ethan again. When she arrived at the landing platform, she noticed a human inspection team already coordinating with the local authorities. And there, standing among them, was Ethan. His posture was calm, his uniform dusty from travel, and his eyes carefully scanning the rocky horizon. For a moment, Leora hesitated. She had expected formality, speeches, and meetings. Not a human standing calmly in the middle of a storm-prone planet, examining the terrain like it was a chessboard. She had never been so close to him outside the controlled environment of the palace. Something about the way he observed the environment, how he listened to the locals, made her pause. He seemed alert, but not alarmed. Detached, yet aware. "Princess Leora," Ethan said, bowing slightly. "It is good to see you again." His voice was calm, almost quiet, but carried a weight of sincerity that surprised her. "Captain Ward," she replied, keeping her tone formal. "I did not expect to find you here." "I am inspecting conditions," he said simply. "It is my responsibility to ensure aid reaches those who need it most." As they moved together through the valley, Leora noticed how Ethan interacted with the locals. A farmer approached, worried about a recent landslide. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions, offering advice on safety and relocation. He helped organize workers to secure unstable ground, using both strategy and empathy. Leora watched in silence, feeling a mix of admiration and surprise. Over the next few hours, the weather worsened. Dark clouds rolled in from the mountains, and winds began to whip through the valley. Leora's team started to panic, unsure how to protect the civilians. Ethan, however, remained composed. "Princess," he said calmly, "we need to move the villagers to the lower caves. It is safer there. I will organize transport." Leora followed him as he directed the operation. She noticed how he treated everyone equally, human or alien, soldier or civilian. His voice was firm but kind. His instructions were clear, leaving no room for confusion. And yet he never raised his voice, never acted superior. As the villagers were moved to safety, a sudden rock slide occurred. A boulder blocked the only path to the main cave. Panic spread among the villagers. Leora's heart raced, and for the first time she felt fear not for herself, but for those she was responsible for. Without hesitation, Ethan ran forward. Using a combination of human strength and careful assessment, he coordinated a small group to move the boulder safely. Leora watched, amazed at his focus and courage. When the rock finally shifted, the path cleared, and the villagers cheered quietly in relief. For the first time, Leora saw something she had not expected: Ethan's subtle smile. It was not wide, nor obvious, but a hint of satisfaction, of relief, of care for the people he helped. She felt a flutter in her chest, a recognition that her previous judgments had been incomplete. That evening, as the storm passed and the sky cleared, Leora and Ethan sat on a cliff overlooking the valley. The stars of Viridia sparkled, reflected in streams and small lakes below. Leora felt a strange peace, mixed with curiosity. "You handled the situation well," she said quietly. "The villagers, they are safe because of you." Ethan shook his head. "We all worked together. I only guided them. The villagers acted bravely. So did your team." Leora considered his words. He never claimed credit. He never sought praise. And yet his actions spoke louder than words. He had courage, intelligence, and something deeper care for life, even if it was quiet and measured. Over the next few days, Leora and Ethan continued to work together. Supplies were distributed, shelters built, and training given to help villagers survive future storms. Each encounter revealed more about Ethan's character. He was thoughtful, patient, and willing to explain the reasoning behind every decision. He treated mistakes as lessons, not failures, and he listened, truly listened to everyone around him, regardless of rank or species. Leora found herself asking questions she had never considered. About humans, about their way of thinking, and about Ethan personally. He answered honestly, sometimes with a calm humor that made her laugh quietly. She realized he was not cold. He simply expressed care in ways that were subtle and practical, rather than flashy or emotional. One afternoon, a group of children approached them. They were curious and shy, but eager to learn about the visitors from the Empire. Leora watched as Ethan knelt down, speaking gently to them. He asked about their school, their chores, and their dreams. He offered advice about safety during storms, and even helped one child fix a broken toy. Leora could hardly believe her eyes. The heartless human she had feared was patient, kind, and attentive. When the day ended, Leora and Ethan returned to the temporary settlement camp. She felt a strange warmth as she watched him organize supplies for the next day, making sure nothing was wasted. She began to realize that true courage and heart were not always loud or visible. They could be quiet, careful, and constant. That night, as Leora lay in her quarters, she thought about everything she had seen. The human she had judged so harshly had shown skill, intelligence, and compassion. She felt a mixture of respect and curiosity. Could she truly have misjudged him? Could someone so careful and disciplined also have a heart capable of kindness, even love? The next morning brought new challenges. A sudden storm threatened the temporary camp, cutting off communications and making travel dangerous. Leora felt a pang of worry for the villagers, but before she could act, Ethan was already assessing the situation. "Princess, we need to move the livestock first," he said calmly. "Then we secure the shelters. Follow me." Together, they coordinated the evacuation. Leora noticed how effortlessly he directed the team, calming panic and fear without anger or force. His leadership was natural, balanced, and effective. Villagers looked to him with trust. Even Leora could not deny that his presence made a difference. After the storm passed, they inspected the damage. Some buildings were ruined, some roads blocked, but no lives were lost. Leora felt relief and admiration. She turned to Ethan. "You never panic," she said quietly. "How do you stay so calm?" Ethan looked at her, eyes steady. Panic does not solve problems. Careful thought, action, and teamwork solve problems. I trust people to do their part, and I do mine. That is all. Leora nodded slowly. His words were simple, but they carried meaning she had never fully understood before. His heart was not absent. It was deliberate, careful, and thoughtful. He showed care through action, not through words or expressions. By the time the humanitarian mission ended, Leora's perception of Ethan had changed completely. She no longer feared him. She no longer doubted his character. Instead, she felt admiration, trust, and even a growing curiosity about the man behind the disciplined exterior as they prepared to return to the capital. Leora realized something she had not expected. She wanted to see him again not because of duty, not because of politics, but because she genuinely wanted to understand him. The human she had once thought heartless had revealed courage, kindness, and intelligence in ways that touched her deeply. She looked at him one last time before boarding the ship. Ethan's gaze met hers, steady and calm. He gave a small nod, acknowledging her presence without words. Leora felt a spark of connection, subtle but undeniable. The journey back to the capital was quiet. Leora reflected on the days spent on Viridia. The storm, the villagers, the children, and Ethan's actions, all of it had shown her a truth she had never anticipated. People, and especially humans, could be far more than appearances suggested. Courage, care, and heart could be shown in quiet, disciplined ways, and somewhere deep inside. Leora realized that her hesitation to trust him had been replaced by curiosity and a desire to understand the man fully. She did not yet know what the future held, but she felt the first stirrings of respect, admiration, and something more an unspoken bond forming between her, the human she had once feared. The stars of Viridia faded behind them as their ship soared back to the capital. Leora leaned back, watching the light reflect on the metallic walls. She thought about the human who had changed her mind. not with words or charm, but with action, patience, and courage. And she wondered, with quiet anticipation, what the next encounter would bring. The capital planet of the Korvax Empire gleamed under the light of twin suns, casting golden reflections on the crystal towers. Leora had returned from Viridia with a new understanding of the human she had once feared. Ethan Ward was no longer a stranger. He was someone she respected deeply, though she still struggled to understand the full depth of his character. A diplomatic mission had been arranged. Leora was to accompany Ethan to a neighboring alien system, the Orvath cluster. The purpose was to negotiate a crucial treaty, one that could prevent a long-standing conflict. The stakes were high. Both their worlds depended on the success of this mission, and failure could mean war. Leora had been trained for diplomacy, but now she faced the challenge of working closely with a human whose actions and mindset she had begun to admire as they traveled through the sleek corridors of the starship. Leora observed Ethan preparing for the negotiations. He studied reports meticulously, analyzed planetary data, and anticipated questions and objections from the Orvath leaders. Everything about him exuded competence, yet there was no arrogance, only quiet confidence. Leora felt her admiration deepen with every passing hour. "Princess," Ethan said, noticing her gaze, "I assume you have reviewed the preliminary notes for the Cluster's Council?" "I have," Leora replied, "but your approach is different from mine. You anticipate their reactions in ways I would not have considered." Ethan's expression remained calm, but Leora thought she saw a small acknowledgement of her observation. "Experience teaches patterns," he said simply. "Understanding behavior helps avoid mistakes." When they arrived at the Orvath cluster, the negotiation began immediately. Alien representatives filled the council chamber, their expressions wary and serious. Leora felt a familiar tension in the air. One wrong move, one poorly chosen word, could unravel years of careful diplomacy. She glanced at Ethan. His eyes were calm, scanning the room, noting every reaction. The council opened with questions about territorial boundaries and resource allocation. Leora began to speak, offering logical arguments and diplomatic reassurances. But she noticed how Ethan's presence influenced the room. He did not interrupt, he did not dominate, but his calm, measured tone and careful responses inspired attention and respect. When he spoke, everyone listened, because he spoke with clarity, fairness, and quiet authority. During the discussions, a misunderstanding arose. One Orvath delegate accused the Korvax Empire of prior violations, demanding immediate concessions. The room grew tense, voices rising, and a few delegates showed signs of anger. Leora felt her chest tighten. The negotiation could fall apart in an instant. Ethan stepped forward, not aggressively, but with precision. "We acknowledge past errors," he said calmly, "but we are here to find solutions, not assign blame. Let us focus on what can be done for mutual benefit." His words carried weight. There was no threat, no arrogance, only logic and fairness. The Orvath delegates paused, reconsidering their approach. Slowly, tension eased. Leora realized that his actions demonstrated something she had never fully understood before. Strength could be quiet. Leadership did not need emotion to be effective. It could exist in careful thought and deliberate action. Throughout the day, Leora and Ethan worked together seamlessly. She handled formalities and ceremonial matters, while he addressed technical concerns and complex negotiations. At every step, she observed his character, the way he listened, the way he anticipated outcomes, the way he treated every delegate with respect, regardless of species or rank. During a private break in the negotiations, Leora found herself walking beside Ethan in the council's gardens. The alien flora glowed softly under the artificial light, casting gentle shadows on the walkway. Leora hesitated, unsure how to express what she felt. "Captain Ward," she said carefully, "I have underestimated you. I thought you were heartless. But I see now that your actions, your decisions, they show care in ways I did not expect." Ethan regarded her calmly. "Care does not always show as emotion," he said quietly. "Sometimes it is in protection, guidance, and thoughtful choices. People confuse calmness with coldness, but they are not the same. Leora nodded slowly, reflecting on their time on Viridia, the villagers, the children, and the storm. She realized that she had judged him based on appearances and rumors rather than truth. And now, after seeing him in action during the negotiations, she understood fully. His heart was present, deliberate, and powerful in its own way. That evening, a minor threat emerged. One Orvath delegate attempted to manipulate information, seeking to trap Leora and Ethan into a false agreement. The council chamber became tense, and whispers spread quickly. Leora felt a pang of fear. Political deception was dangerous, and mistakes could have serious consequences. Ethan acted immediately. He identified the deception, calmly corrected the record, and presented evidence with careful reasoning. His actions prevented the situation from escalating, and the council deferred the matter for further review. Leora watched him handle the crisis with composure and precision. Once again, she realized the depth of his skill and the care he showed for both her and her people. Later, in private, Leora spoke to him. "You risked yourself to protect me and the Empire's interests," she said. "You did not need to." "Why?" Ethan looked at her, steady and calm. "It is the right choice," he said simply. "Duty, responsibility, and care are not always easy, but they are necessary." Leora felt a wave of admiration and something deeper she had not expected. She realized that courage was not only about facing danger, it was also about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. And in Ethan, she had seen that courage in abundance. The following day, the final stage of the negotiation began. The remaining disagreements were delicate trade agreements, shared technology, and border management. Leora and Ethan worked side by side, each complementing the other's skills. Leora handled diplomacy with grace, while Ethan addressed logic, fairness, and problem-solving with unparalleled clarity. By the end of the day, the treaty was successfully signed. The Orvath delegates expressed respect and admiration for both leaders. Leora felt a sense of relief and pride. The mission had succeeded. She had learned more about herself and about the human she had once feared. Later, as they returned to their ship, Leora approached Ethan quietly. "Captain Ward," she said softly, "I understand now. You are not heartless. You are everything I thought a leader should be." Ethan's eyes met hers, calm but steady. "I am simply who I am," he replied. "I do not pretend. I act according to what is necessary and right." Leora smiled, a feeling of warmth spreading through her chest. She realized that she trusted him fully, not just as a leader, but as a person. And she felt something more, a connection that went beyond duty, politics, or appearances, as their ship traveled back to the Korvax capital. Leora reflected on everything she had experienced. She had learned that courage, care, and heart were not always loud or obvious. Sometimes they were quiet, deliberate, and steadfast. And sometimes they came from those she had least expected, like the human who had once seemed heartless, but who had proven himself time and again through action, kindness, and integrity. When they arrived, the palace awaited with celebrations and formalities. Leora knew that her duties were far from over, but she also knew something important. She had seen the true character of a human, and it had changed her. She had judged him too quickly, and now she understood his heart, his courage, and his care in the private moments that followed. Leora stood on the balcony of the palace, looking at the glittering city below. She felt anticipation, curiosity, and something she had never expected: trust, admiration, and even affection. The human beside her had shown her strength and care in ways no words could explain, and she realized she wanted to be near him, to understand him more fully, and perhaps to share a future built on respect, trust. In partnership, Ethan joined her silently, standing beside her without speaking. The city lights reflected in his calm eyes. Leora looked at him, then spoke, her voice soft but certain. "I see now. You are not heartless. You are more than I could have imagined." Ethan nodded gently. "Thank you, Princess." That means more than words can express. And in that quiet moment, beneath the golden towers and the light of twin suns, Leora understood fully. She no longer hesitated. The human she had once feared, the man whose heart had seemed invisible, had shown her courage, care, and strength. She had seen the truth. And she knew, without doubt, that her future and, perhaps, the future of the Korvax Empire was bound to his in ways she had never anticipated. The stars shone brightly above, signaling a new beginning not just for diplomacy or alliance or empire, but for the understanding between two very different beings. Leora had met the human. She had witnessed his heart. She was ready to accept what she had once feared. The story of fear, doubt, and hesitation had come to an end. The story of respect, understanding, and trust had only just begun. And together, Leora and Ethan would face whatever the galaxy had in store. Not as strangers, not as diplomat and soldier, but as allies, partners, and friends who understood the true meaning of courage, care, and heart.